So, it's been about a year since Doctor Who Season 1 / Series 14 dropped, and I've been thinking about how I feel about it. And the truth is, I'm pretty mixed on it, which is to say, I thought it was okay. There was some stuff that I really liked, and some stuff that I really didn't, but on the whole, I thought it was fine. But then that made me wonder, what is it that doesn't work for me with this season? What is it that stops this from being the brilliant, fresh start for the series that I was hoping for? So I started making some notes, and before you know it, I've got myself a season rewrite, full of all the little tweaks and changes that I'd have made to fix what I think are some of the weaker links. As you've probably seen from the title, this is part 1. I'm going to be splitting this project up into a couple of videos, maybe 3, depending on how long they end up and how long they take to make. Before we start, my aim here obviously isn't to completely trash everything that Russell T Davies and the production team have done, or to make out that I could have done better if I were in his shoes, because that's delusional. Russell is a national treasure, an extremely accomplished writer and producer with decades of experience in the industry. Also, there are obviously a whole host of behind the scenes factors that we're not privy to, which may have influenced and informed certain creative decisions. Plus, I'm aware of the power of hindsight and that it's a lot easier to point out flaws after the fact. So this isn't me getting on my high horse and saying I know better than the professionals. Equally, I know that not everyone will agree with some of the additions and changes that I'm suggesting, which is absolutely fine, obviously. But I am putting myself out there with this, as with any creative work, so please be kind. I'd love to hear people's thoughts on both my rewrites and the original series, whether that's positive or negative, so let's have a chat in the comments and just make sure it's constructive and in good faith. Lastly, I apologise if I sound a little bit rough. I'm currently recording this whilst in the middle of recovering from surgery, so if I sound a little bit groggy, that's why.
How are you today?
Oh, not so bad, still a bit, blah.
But that's enough of all of that, let's get stuck in. So to start off, I set myself some key objectives, and those objectives are: 1. Go full out with the reboot. I think this is already difficult with all the continuity set up during the 60th, specifically the giggle being 15's introduction, and also all of the Toymaker and Pantheon stuff being so relevant to this series, and then the fact that the 60th itself is a sort of legacy sequel to Series 4. So to understand everything in this, you have to have seen this. But to understand everything in this, you probably have to have seen this, which means you've probably got to have seen these. Do you see what I'm saying? And this is not to say that I think the idea of doing a soft reboot is a bad one. Quite the opposite, I think this is the ideal time to do a little bit of a shake-up. You've had the return of David Tennant, Catherine Tate and Russell T Davies, potentially bringing back some of those old audiences. You've also got Disney Plus bringing in a new, wider international audience. And you've got that general surge of interest that you always get at the start of a new Doctor's era. Probably even more so with Ncuti Gatwa because people recognise him from Sex Education and the Barbie movie. I think we just need to remember that this is being set up as a jumping on point for new audiences, so let's make sure it's accessible to them and we're not relying too much on the past. 2. Make characterisation the priority. I think Russell's greatest strength is his character writing, and I don't think it's really on show here. So we're going to centre the Doctor and Ruby in the story. We're going to add layers to their relationship, show some conflict. We're going to give 15 a more obvious flaw, and show Ruby to be missing something. Tell me, why does she want to travel? On that note, we're also not going to be majorly recharacterising anyone. The broad strokes of how these characters are written and portrayed are staying the same. 3. Establish the formula of the show. There are a lot more experimental episodes in this season, both in terms of structure and tone. You've got your more obvious ones like 73 Yards and Dot and Bubble being Dr. Light, but also Boom, which is a sort of bottle episode, and The Devil's Cord, which goes full out with the supernatural Pantheon related stuff. I'm still keeping all of these episodes, but I think we need to better establish the quote unquote usual kind of Doctor Who formula, just so these stand out a bit more as doing something different, rather than just being part of that eclectic mix that makes up this series. And part of the way that we're going to do this is 4 more episodes and reshuffle the order. Now, I know what you're thinking. Obviously, a 13 episode series is out of the question. It's not 2005 anymore. I think 8 episodes could work, but for a first series trying to establish a new Doctor, a new companion, several ongoing mysteries and series arcs, whilst doing predominantly standalone Adventure of the Week stories, and having to work around Ncuti's schedule, and trying to shape that into a digestible rebrand of the show, is just too much. I think the Whittaker series mould of 10 episodes is probably that sweet spot that we're going for. Of course, a longer series means more money, but I'm not actually adding that many extra stories in here. You'll see what I mean in a moment, but what we are adding, we're doing on the cheap. So, what does this reshuffled run look like now? Here's the new order. Initially, I wanted to spread out the more experimental episodes, but as we've said, there are quite a few of those, and with such a small episode count, there's only so many combinations that you can have. We obviously need The Church on Ruby Road as our pilot, which we're essentially treating it as. In an ideal world, we'd either have the full series continue not long after Christmas, or rebroadcast the special just before the rest of the series airs, just to establish that this is the intended starting point and not Space Babies. And then the finale obviously remains as the finale, but other than that, most stories can shift around in the running order. The main difference that I've made is adding a new story after Space Babies. This is to give opportunity for the Doctor and Ruby to develop their relationship a bit, and we've moved the Devil's Cord and 73 Yards much later in the run. The Devil's Cord is a big change from that standard formula, as we've said. I think it feels a bit more suited to a later slot, and it also now comes around the midway point to foreshadow the finale a bit more. 73 Yards is similarly a bit of a sidestep from the usual format, and having it here gives more weight to Ruby losing the Doctor, as they have a more developed relationship at this point. Putting it just before the finale means that we can also have it directly lead into those events, like we do with Turn Left. So just to give you an idea on how it's all going to work, I'm going to go through episode by episode with some key objectives for what I wanted to change, and then just talking you through all of the little tweaks that I'm making. So let's go. Episode 1, The Church on Ruby Road. As we've said, we're treating this as the series opener, because it essentially is. We're making it almost entirely from Ruby's point of view. This is her episode. Almost all scenes are from her perspective, like Rose, except for one particular sequence, but we'll get to that. We're going to better characterise Ruby, find out what is it that she's missing, and don't have her slip into the Doctor's way of life too easily. We're also going to cut some of the fluff in the front half. It's nice, but it doesn't add much to what we're trying to do here. And we're not going to show the Doctor properly until the rooftop scene, just to give him some mystery and have this as the big introduction. We can have shots of him from the back or silhouettes, things like that, but we're going to build to that big reveal. Lastly, more goblins. Tonally for this episode, we're going for Labyrinth plus Gremlins, with that Doctor Who flavouring. Also, just give me more goblins. I mean, they're great. Look at these guys. I love them. We begin with our fairy tale intro. The Doctor walks out of the TARDIS, and this is shot from the back, or maybe a close-up on his eyes, and we're also not going to name him in that opening narration. We're just going to call him a time traveller. We're going to add a brief post-title scene of Ruby on the documentary set. She's sat on her own, staring off into space, deep in thought. A runner comes over to get her for the shoot. Sorry, I was miles away. We establish that she's a bit of a dreamer, she's a bit lost. Another quick bit of dialogue where she's introduced to Davina, and then we cut to the interview, in which we're going to emphasise why finding her birth parents is so important to Ruby, or at least allude to it being properly delved into later in the series. Specifically, make more of this line.
What are you hoping for? Just the truth.
Then we cut to the gig scene, just now without the Doctor, and then after that the club scene, but we're going to cut the Doctor's dancing. It's a really great moment, but it doesn't quite fit with what we're trying to do. Maybe add a brief bit of dialogue with Ruby and her friends, where they say that they're going to go and dance, and instead she opts to sit with her drink. It's clear there's something on her mind. The first time we glimpse the Doctor is when he catches Ruby's drink, and it plays out like Martha's first meeting with the Doctor in Smith and Jones. A fleeting interaction with a strange man that doesn't really make sense. Then he's gone. After that we get the snowman sequence, but again, not showing the Doctor, just get a close-up of the screwdriver changing the traffic lights at the last second, saving them before it falls. Then a shot of the goblin in the shadows muttering to itself. Unfortunately, this does mean that we have to cut all of the stuff with the policeman in the engagement ring. It's a really nice little scene. However, again, it doesn't fit with what we're trying to do. We don't want any proper scenes with the Doctor just yet. We cut to the next day and have everything with Mrs. Flood, Carla and Cherry, the new baby, the phone call with Davina, all of that stuff's great. Ruby sees that Lulubelle has disappeared, chases the goblins and ends up on the roof. When she first interacts with them, I think there needs to be more fear and confusion. No, did you just hiss at me? Although I do really like that line, so it's going to come back later. It just needs to be more...
What the blinking flip?
Then we get the Doctor's big entrance on the rooftops. This is our proper introduction to the character in full action mode. But he doesn't introduce himself as the Doctor. We're going to save that for the very end. They get pulled up onto the ship where the goblins tie them up. What the hell are those things? Goblins. What? They're goblins. 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 Well, this is the worst birthday ever. What did you say? Oh, never mind me, they've got Lulubelle. Continue the scene as normal, with the Doctor recognising the coincidence of Ruby and Lulubelle sharing a birthday, which is why he thinks the goblins have gone after her, and all of his theories on how they operate, with that lovely description of coincidence is stitching you into the day and how this makes the baby even tastier to them. And then have this as the first point where Ruby realises that they're going to eat Lulubelle, which ramps up the panic and her need to rescue her. We've got to emphasise this priority of saving Lulubelle. Don't let her get distracted by the madness of this situation, and don't have her and the Doctor being too comfortable around each other. They have chemistry, but they're still strangers. Have her dismiss his comments about Houdini and instead be hurrying him so they can go and save the baby. Urgent, almost angry. They manage to get out and the Doctor starts learning the language of rope, where they get through to the little lift shaft or whatever the goblin pirate ship equivalent is. Then we get the big song. I actually really like the song, so we're keeping it, but we are going to tweak it. Specifically the Doctor and Ruby's part. So the two burst in, interrupt the whole thing, save Lulubelle from getting eaten, and then the Doctor takes control gradually. Have the goblins weirdly charmed and distracted by his nerve, amused by the funny man. And we're also going to change the lyrics to be a bit less crap, though it should still sound as if they're making them up as they go along. More so for Ruby, who is obviously not used to this kind of situation. And the whole time that they're singing, the Doctor is entertaining the goblins, whilst also looking around the room, inspecting the rope, looking for the master knot. I'm really sorry, you're going to have to excuse the singing.
Rocket Janice!
'Cause the Goblin King, oh the Goblin King, so good to meet you, you great big thing. What night I was so lucky to be here with you now, it's your time, Ruby. Hello, your majesty, Sir Goblin King. I really don't know what to sing, but I beg you please don't eat the baby. Oh my god, they were making it gravy. The goblins causing mischief and incidents, soaking up all of that coincidence. 50 miles up in the sky we're stuck, this time it's you that's out of luck. You shouldn't have let me sing, oh no, 'cause now I've had time to study that rope, and in my hand is the master knot. Back down to earth, we're ready to drop. Ruby, grab the baby, get ready to fall. Merry Christmas, one and all. What do you mean fall? Hold on tight. The Doctor and Ruby jump off the conveyor belt, plunging downwards before landing safely on her roof. They laugh and hug, but Ruby almost loses her footing and trips back. Careful! Careful. It's you. You were at the club. Sorry? The other night, you were there, you caught my drink, you spoke to me. Not me. Come on, I'd only had a couple of drinks. It's you. Really? Well, that's something to look forward to, Ruby Sunday. Our first meeting. Who are you? We go back into Ruby's flat. We get all of this lovely flirting with Cherry and the Doctor, and then we're going to put back a little bit of dialogue that didn't make it into the finished cut, where the Doctor says that he could take Lulubelle out of the day. This sets up both that they have to wait this out till midnight, and also plants the seed of the Doctor being a time traveller in Ruby's head. Ramp up the chaos of the scene of them looking for potential accidents, quickly preventing any Final Destination-esque threats, but make it fun. You know, one of them's trying to get rid of all of the knives and nearly runs into the other, and have them bickering. How do you switch off your oven? How should I know? It's your oven. Suddenly Lulubelle is crying and they realise that no one's watching her. They rush back into the room, but no goblins. She's fine. They take a breath, calm down, exchange a look. Okay. We cut back to them in the kitchen. Ruby's making them a cup of tea whilst the doctor holds the baby and they chat, with the doctor intermittently telling Ruby to be careful with the kettle and things like that. So is this what you do then? Fight goblins? No, it's usually aliens. Goblins are a new one for me. I actually can't tell if he's serious or not. Okay, so what are we meant to do? Is there like, I don't know, is there someone we can call or... But something has caught his eye. He walks across to the fridge, smiling. The door is covered with photos of young children. Who are they? The rest of this scene plays out as normal, but the doctor's segue out of it is... Okay, so, goblins. How do we stop him? I don't know, told you, this is my first time. Oh, great. Hey, when's the last time you fought off a horde of goblins? Careful! I'm sorry, there's not exactly an instruction manual for this. Yes, there is. Here. It just says, trust me. Exactly. Okay. Carla returns to the flat and we get this scene of her talking about Ruby and the doctor saying that he was adopted. Then when we start getting into all of the coincidence stuff, all of those lines are going to Carla because she's not in the know. It feels a little bit weird, the doctor saying them out loud when he knows that the goblins operate on coincidence. That just doesn't quite add up for me. Now, big change here. Ruby doesn't disappear from time. Originally, I wanted to completely scrap the whole plot point of the goblins going after baby Ruby altogether. Not because I didn't like it, but because it betrays the whole everything from Ruby's perspective focus that I'm going for. Can't tell the story from her perspective when she's been erased from the story. But the coincidence of Ruby and Lulubelle's birthdays and all of those other coincidences surrounding them, it pretty clearly points to this. And I couldn't think of a better alternative that still paid off those thematic elements. So we are going to keep them going after her. But she's not going to disappear from time. Just as Carla starts noting all of the coincidences, the storm outside ramps up, and the goblins can be heard chattering and giggling. The Doctor and Ruby look out of the window and we see glimpses of them scampering away, as though they've just been released and they're off to cause havoc. The Doctor and Ruby run out to try and stop them, telling Carla not to take her eye off the baby. Thus, we begin our third act. We have an extended sequence of the goblins causing mischief all over town, gremlin style, gradually amping up as they cause more and more chaos. We can have some fun scenes of them interacting with random extras and Ruby's neighbours. You know, they're terrorising Christmas shoppers, stealing presents, tripping the fuse boxes. Maybe one gets into Mrs. Flood's house and she boots it to the other side of the room. Cherry wakes up thinking that she's finally got her cup of tea, but the goblins have filled the cup with worms.
What the blinking flip?
Just loads of little fun, mischievous gags. The Doctor and Ruby try and stop the goblins menacing where they can, but there's only 2 of them and there's hundreds of these things. But more importantly, the Doctor wonders why they're doing this. There's too many of them. Oi, you, stop. Did you just hiss at me? Was that a hiss? Why? Why are they doing this? Because they're evil little goblins. Yeah, they like causing chaos, but that's just their idea of fun. 5 minutes ago they were trying to eat a baby. Oh, it's your birthday. Ruby, quickly, go help your mum with the baby. Make sure they don't get to her. What about you? I know what they're planning. This is all a distraction. I need to go. Don't leave me. I'll be back. Just go. So the Doctor has realised that the goblins are now going after the baby Ruby and is racing to reach her before they do. The rest of the scene plays out pretty much as normal, but intercut with Ruby fending off goblins in the flat. I think maybe we could have her feeling a little bit ill or unsteady as a reference to the looming threat of her being erased in that kind of Back to the Future way, but I don't know if that's completely necessary. I know some people don't like the Doctor outright murdering the Goblin King, but I think it is a good use of that church setting by impaling him on the steeple. That's a really nice image. Not nice image, but you know what I mean. And also it means we have that cool action moment of him jumping off the roof. This said, I think we add a moment of the Doctor pulling the ship down to a level where he can talk to the goblins to give them this ultimatum, and then when they don't listen, he has no choice but to jump. We can also have a brief shot of him looking back up at the steeple as the last of the ship disintegrates, feeling conflicted about his actions, just so it doesn't look too much like gleeful murder on Christmas Day. And when the goblin ship disappears, all the goblins from the present day do too. The Doctor leaves baby Ruby at the church, returning to the TARDIS, and sees her mother. He stops for a moment, looking conflicted, and then decides not to reach out. He returns to Ruby's flat in the present day, but doesn't explain anything about going back. Now this is important, it's going to come back later. Ruby's absolutely elated that he's returned. I didn't think you were coming back. Seeding those abandonment issues. And then the Doctor realises that he's forgotten something. However, instead of having him save Davina McCall, just because I think it's way funnier if she actually gets off by goblins with a Christmas tree, we're going to have him go back and meet Ruby at the club. So we get a replay of the scene and then the full shot of him saving her from the falling snowman. Hell, you know what? Let's put the dancing back in. It's a really fun scene and it'll annoy the bigots, so win-win. Then the Doctor comes back to Ruby's flat and the rest of the episode basically plays out as is, ending on that final, "Who are you?" on the Doctor. And that is it. The Church on Ruby Road, Christmas 2023, episode 1 in the bag.
Hey, fancy another one?
You know what, Davina? I do. Let's go. Episode 2, Space Babies. So we're basically doing Alien, but with a Douglas Adams-y kind of twist. This is the story that shows Ruby earning her stripes. Most companions' first or second trip are where they prove their right to be on the TARDIS, and why the Doctor needs them. Donna in Fires of Pompeii, Amy in Beast Below, Clara in Rings of Akaten, Bill in Thin Ice. So this is going to be Ruby's. Majorly cut back on the exposition, and the stuff that we do keep is going to be integrated much more naturally. We're going to add an immediate threat. We're also going to replace the human babies with alien babies and make more of the children need stories concepts. Bake that into other parts of the script. So we pick up straight from the end of The Church on Ruby Road. The Doctor introduces Ruby to the TARDIS, but we're not doing the big backstory info dump. It's too much. We're going to drip feed it through the series, or even just this episode if need be. Just stick with the explanation of his name and the police box disguise. So, you're a doctor, but you're the police. No, that's just a disguise. Don't worry about that. It's what's on the inside that counts. It's a time machine. I knew it. This thing flies. Want to see? They take a quick trip to the past, and we have this great little gag. Works as a shorthand to show that we really can go anywhere. Definitely keep this 5 numbers bit. It's a really small moment, but I just love the energy it has. The TARDIS lands, and we have a streamlined version of the Chameleon Circuit explanation. So why's your spaceship a box? It's got a circuit built in to change what it looks like camouflage. We can change its shape so it blends in wherever it lands. But it's still a box. Oh, it's broken. Most of the universe is knackered, babes. We're keeping all of this first encounter with the bogeyman, especially the no such thing as monsters, just creatures you haven't met yet, as we're going to call back to it later, and also it's a great line. We get this brief chase scene and then they end up upstairs. We're going to cut the whole "why did I run" thing. That's like his whole thing. Obviously it's a set up to the whole idea of the bogeyman's roar being this special fear frequency, but it's way too obviously signposted, because it's not an unusual reaction to have, to run away from that creature. So the fact that the Doctor treats it as one makes it obvious that this is set up for a later plot point. This could be seeded much more subtly, maybe just with brief references that could even double as little bits of exposition for Ruby and new audiences. Whew, man, that thing really got the hearts beating. Hearts, plural. Double the loving, babes. That's the thing. That creature downstairs is new. I love meeting new things, but every nerve in my body was screaming for me to run. Well, yeah, mine too were dead scary. No, it was more than that. It was like, what is this place? Light switch? No, you're going to turn off the oxygen. Oh my god. No, I'm kidding. It's the light switch. We're going to keep Ruby's line about looking for her parents, but have it as more of a throwaway comment, so it doesn't seem as though that's the reason she's come along. And also have the Doctor quickly move past it, slightly sheepishly, We're also going to cut that whole push the button gag. I know this is something they probably couldn't avoid in the edit if they had planned to use that Sugar Babe song, but even then it's not a particularly good recurring joke or reference or whatever it's meant to be. We're also going to move the Doctor's Days Like This monologue to the end of the story. Obviously the Doctor hasn't trauma dumped on Ruby in this version yet, so it wouldn't really make sense to be here. Instead, this scene will just be Ruby marvelling at the view and coming to terms with the fact that she really is in space. Equally, we're going to cut the whole translation circuit and superphone exposition scenes. They're just a really poor imitation of the scene in The End of the World, right down to the joke about the bill. The original scene works so well because it's exposition that's rooted in character and drama, whereas there's none of that in the Space Baby scene, so it doesn't need to be here. So we're changing the babies to be alien, mainly to avoid this Uncanny Valley effect, but also to be a little bit more creative and kooky with the episodes, because it seems to be going for that slightly campy, batshit tone, like The End of the World or New Earth. In terms of design, I think something similar to the Adipose or the Pating or the Porgs from Star Wars. I think reasonably humanoid, but make them small and cute with big eyes. Then the Doctor and Ruby meet the babies. I think keep all of this, just have them pottering about. Definitely keep the when's the last time you had a hug scene, because that's really lovely, and we're also going to reference it later with the ending. And same with the nobody grows up wrong scene, that's a really nice moment. The Doctor and Ruby ask the babies about the bogeyman, and the kids explain it's like the monsters they hear about in their stories. We're not going to have the Doctor wind the babies up with the bogeyman, that feels out of character. Instead, he's just trying to gather more information on the creature from the baby's reactions, and is just being oblivious to the emotional distress that it's causing them, whereas Ruby is very aware and reacts to this, causing some brief conflict between the two. Doctor, fascinating. Why is it so scary? Doctor, turn it off. I need to see. Doctor, whatever the hell that thing is, these kids are terrified. Turn it off. The Doctor looks at the babies, a moment of guilt. He turns the screen off. No, kids, stop it. Listen to me. I'm sorry, babies. Ruby comforts them. The Doctor stands watching her. She meets his eye. There's a faint smile and a nod. Good job. As the Doctor turns back to the control desk, Ruby tells the babies her story to comfort them, similar to how the Doctor tells his to Poppy. They've both been abandoned, but everything works out okay in the end, and her and the Doctor are here to help. We can maybe add a cheeky bit of foreshadowing with her saying that not all stories have monsters. Then the Doctor discovers Nanny, leaves, and Ruby joins him in the corridor. We're going to keep them discussing her birth, but just condense it a bit. He's overheard her telling her story to the babies and asks again, you really don't know anything about your birth mother or your father. As they talk and Ruby remembers, it begins to snow, like the memories bleeding through. But we're not going to have the Doctor put too much focus on the mother's identity. We're also adding into this the Doctor's guilt and the secret that he's keeping from Ruby, that he has been to Ruby Road, which adds to his confusion when the memory begins to change. Then the two meet Jocelyn and get a bit more information. I think definitely keep this idea of Jocelyn's fear of letting the baby see her die, because that's a really nice character beat. But as she says that, we're going to have the Doctor finishing the sentence for her, showing that he understands and can empathise with her. I just think that would be a really nice beat for the Doctor to have picked up on that and sort of know what she's feeling. We're also going to keep the refugee commentary, maybe make it a little bit less on the nose. It feels a tad preachy, but the message is obviously solid and it fits well. So when Jocelyn says that she doesn't know what the creature is, have her also reference that the babies call it the bogeyman. It's a monster. We're reiterating this. During this conversation, the Doctor says that he can get them all out in the TARDIS. This doesn't end up happening because the bogeyman's in the way. And also we're going to establish the immediate threat. Hold on, how did you even get here? My ship brought us on board. It's parked downstairs. So I can get you all out. Babies and Nanny, safe and sound. Away from the big bad bogeyman. Downstairs where? I thought you could see everything. We've got limited power. I reserve it for the rooms that the babies can access and the creature's corridor. Where did you get in? We landed here and came through this door. Why? No. What's wrong? You've opened a door. It should be contained in that one corridor, but you've given it a way out. It's going to come up here. Eric toddles off to go and give the Pokemon a talking to, And Ruby sees this and immediately springs into action. There's a guilt and a responsibility, but it's also a maternal instincts and wanting to protect them. She's not thinking about herself, she's thinking about Eric. However, in this version, they don't know where the bogeyman is. So we get an extended chase sequence where the Doctor and Ruby rush to find Eric, with Ruby trying to bring the bogeyman to them to buy them more time. We can even have a quick gag here from Ruby. What is it with you and monsters that eat babies? They manage to find Eric just as the bogeyman roars around the corner. The Doctor tells Ruby to take Eric back upstairs whilst he distracts the bogeyman, managing to get to safety, closing a door behind him, but the bogeyman stands at the other side, looking at him through the glass, reaching out, and the Doctor watches for a second, trying to work out what it wants. We have a short scene of Ruby comforting the babies, then asking Nanny where the Doctor is. Jocelyn can't see him on the cameras, so Ruby pleads for her to come and look after the babies while she goes to help the Doctor. She knows that she's scared, but they need their nanny. Jocelyn appears in the door and there's a short, sweet interaction with her and the babies, meeting for the first time. The two bump into each other and they explore this corridor, where we get the revelation of the monster being created by the computer and made out of bogies. It's incredibly silly, but also I think really fun, and the Doctor and Ruby's dynamic in this scene is great. Then the bogeyman pops up, we run, Jocelyn traps it in the airlock and tries to throw it out. And that's where the Doctor realises that this isn't a monster. Without the Sonic, he gets Ruby to try and do something that will override the system. As he goes into the airlock, Jocelyn comes over the comms. What the hell are you doing? Saving its life. What do you mean? It's a monster. The Doctor hits the button, the airlock closes and they both fall to the floor. He walks towards it cautiously. There's no such thing as monsters. There's creatures you haven't met yet. The bogeyman gets to its feet, towering over the Doctor, and then it holds out its claw and they touch. And then he wraps his arms around the Doctor, pressing his face against all the gunk and slime of its body. The Doctor has a second of discomfort before shrugging it off and laughing. Nice to meet you, bogeyman. We cut to a nice epilogue scene of the babies learning to get over their fear of the bogeyman, just so we can properly pay off that beat, and then cut to the Doctor and Ruby on their way back to the TARDIS. So that was a normal day for you then? No, that was extra special nuts. So, Ruby Sunday, where to next? But Ruby has stopped to take in the view once again. Are they going to be alright? The babies? I hope so. I hope they'll be taken in by people that will show them love, kindness. I think we all need some of that, don't you? Ruby wonders whether to ask. Before, you said you don't have family. No. Is that, like, an alien thing? I mean, have you ever had family? Yes. But not anymore. What happened? They're gone. They're all gone, Ruby. There was a genocide and they died. And I'm the one that's left. The last of the Time Lords. And I am so happy to be alive. I'm so sorry. It's okay. How do you keep going? For days like this, Ruby Sunday. I don't have a people. I don't have a home. But I don't have a job either. I don't have a boss or taxes or rent or bills to pay. I don't have a purpose or a cause or a mission. But I have freedom. And so I keep moving on. To see the next thing, and the next, and the next. And sometimes it looks even better through your eyes. I have the whole universe at my fingertips. And I'm all on my own. So I would love it if you came with me. The only difference here is that he doesn't give Ruby a TARDIS key. We're going to hold off on that for another story. In the TARDIS, the Doctor tells Ruby that they can never go back to Ruby Road, which is upsetting, but she accepts it. And we can see the guilt of keeping this secret gnawing away at him. And we're not going to have the TARDIS return to Ruby's flat, because we never get to see Carla and Cherry learning about the Doctor or interacting with him. Not that it would really fit here. So we're going to save all of that for later. Instead, the Doctor shows Ruby around the TARDIS, or we get another random landing and they step out for their next adventure, ending on that final shot of the snow in the console room. That's right, we're keeping the snow. It's a great visual and we're going to try and give it a reason to exist. But that's it, episode 2, Space Babies. Let's move on. Episode 3. So this is the new one. It's not really a proper story idea, just very bare bones. It'd be a kind of standard adventure, not as wacky as Church on Ruby Road or Space Babies, but also not as tonally grim as Boom. It'd be historical, so we don't have 3 futuristic or spacey adventures back to back. Set it in the 80s or 90s, so we're still doing a historical of sorts, but we've not got to throw loads of the budget at trying to realise a setting more substantially different to modern day. I mean, it'd be great to do an adventure set in ancient Greece or Imperial China, but I'm already stretching the budget to have an extra story here at all, so we're going to keep it cheapish. Its primary function is to flesh out the relationship between the Doctor and Ruby a bit more. Half of Boom, 73 yards, and a lot of Rogue separates them, and Dot and Bubble leaves little time for them to properly interact. So I think we need more time with them actually together. This is where we're going to have some more substantial conflict between the two, but by story's end they're closer and have kind of cemented their friendship. Part of this is going to be Ruby's first exposure to death and real danger. So far Ruby hasn't seen any of the villains kill or seen any real consequences for these fun adventures that she's on. So this will be the first time that she has this realization. I want to make this a substantial character beat, a little bit like Clara's glimpse of the dead body in Cold War. Partly as a result of this, Ruby returns home at the end, introducing the Doctor to Carla and explaining what it is that she's doing. This is where we get the scene that features in Rogue of the Doctor and Carla's conversation, and I think that's how we'd end the story, with Carla trusting the Doctor to look after Ruby, but also being a little bit apprehensive with letting her go. Both the fact that she's walking into potential danger, but also this idea of her flying the nest, something which is exacerbated by the idea that she's looking for her quote-unquote real mum. There's a little bit of insecurity there with Carla, which I think we need to dig into. A couple more things we're going to do with this episode. Basically establish Ruby's backstory. She was adopted by Carla in Manchester, where the two lived for most of Ruby's life. Ruby finished school, thought about going to university, but it never really happened. Partly because she didn't know what or where she wanted to study, and partly because she moved with Carla to London to care for her Gran Cherry. Relocated to London meant Ruby moving away from her friends and almost everyone she'd ever known, most of whom didn't really stay in touch, reinforcing her fear of being forgotten and left behind. Since being in London, Ruby has bounced around a couple of jobs. Retail, bar work, 2 days as a hotel receptionist, which she walked out of when the manager made a snarky comment about a northern accent, but nothing concrete. She enjoys her music and has considered making a bit of a go of it with her band, but she doesn't really think it's a viable option. She's just not really been able to find her feet and has no idea what she wants to do with her life. It becomes apparent that Ruby feels like she can't progress and move on with her life because she feels held back by not knowing who she is, as a result of being adopted and not knowing the truth about her birth parents. We're also going to establish why it is that she wants to travel with the Doctor. And for my version of Ruby, this is for a combination of reasons. One, subconsciously, it's a form of escapism for her. She doesn't need to think about the future when she's in a time machine. She can literally put her life on pause. Two, she knows that the Doctor might be able to help her answer some of her questions about her origins. Three, as a defense mechanism in relation to her abandonment issues. She doesn't have to risk getting left behind if she's the one that runs away, which we get more on in 73 yards. So that's about it for this story. Not really a story, but just some things that I think needed to happen at this early stage that you can't really do in the stories we've already got. I think if this were to have some kind of plot, we could maybe look at doing something kind of similar to Can You Hear Me?, where we're looking at fears and insecurities and the subconscious and kind of bringing those out. I don't know, maybe that's a little bit trite, but you get the idea. So, moving on. Episode 4, Boom. There's not actually loads to change in this one. It's maybe my favourite from the season and it does really well at everything it's trying to do. However, there are some little tweaks that I want to make. For this one, I'm not going to go through the whole story. I'm just going to tell you my changes because a lot of it's staying the same. So we're going to do something a little bit more interesting than the power of love ending. I think this is the main flaw of this episode for me. I think we need a less cliche romantic subplot, and to make more of this tension of trying to hide Veta's death from Splice, and we've got to have her actually react to it when she inevitably does find out. Also, actually dwell on Ruby's death. Last episode, she's properly exposed to death. In this one, she has to face the very real possibility of the Doctor's and then her own. Let's do something with that. We're going to cut the romantic tension and "you don't even like me" lines from Mundy. They're just too clunky. They feel like they've been written. Throughout, we're going to have Splice asking about her dad. Where is he? Why can't she contact him on comms? Why does the geotrace say that he's here? What's the hologram of him about? Make this another source of the tension. I.e., we're going to add a moment of Mundy recognising what the Doctor is holding when she first arrives, asking about the name on the casket. That doesn't belong to you. I know. Who is it? The Doctor looks across at Splice. I can't. Give me the name. Seriously. Give me the name. Please. The name. John Francis Veta. Daddy! No, I'm sorry. Mundy, what is that thing? I am the final remains of John. Stop! No, Daddy! Mundy and the Doctor exchange a look. She understands now. Splice, you need to go back to the camp. I've not mentioned it yet, but one of the big controversies in terms of the 15th Doctor's characterization is how frequently he cries. And unfortunately, I have to say I do kind of agree with this criticism. Obviously, I'm not talking about any of the anti-woke criticisms. I'm thinking purely from a character and narrative perspective. I don't mind having certain incarnations of the Doctor be more emotional or more human. I mean, my Doctor is the 10th, who's arguably the most emotional and human besides 15. I quite like the idea of Ncuti's Doctor being more open with his feelings, because that all kind of ties into the whole Time Lord therapy idea from the Giggle. However, I think the fact that he cries so frequently majorly detracts from the emotional impact of that for us as the audience. In the past, the Doctor shedding a tear was a pretty big thing, and it had the power to really dial up the emotion of a scene. But 15 cries in every episode of his first series, and after a while it starts to have diminishing returns. It's a bit of a boy who cried wolf situation. I've just read that in the script now. That was genuinely no pun intended. I've just realised that now. Anyway, for example, I think the single biggest emotional moment of this series is the ending of Dot and Bubble, with that absolute gut punch of a scene, which we'll get to in a bit. But how much more impactful could that have been if we'd not seen the Doctor cry in every episode preceding it? So that's my fix. We're saving the tears until that moment in Dot and Bubble. However, I don't want to lose that real fear that the Doctor has in this episode, and I do think that tear he has rolling down his cheek really effectively communicates this. So we're going to have him maybe a little bit watery-eyed as he stares blankly ahead. I'm thinking something similar to Tennant's expression in Midnight when he's just been possessed by the entity and is completely helpless to what's going on around him, but no tears just yet. Okay, so this is a nitpick, but Mundy says if the landmine can't detect the target within a certain time frame, then it detonates anyway.
So when you stepped on that mine, you triggered a countdown. It's now trying to assess whether it's acquired a viable target. If it can't within a specified time, it fails safe. It blows anyway.
Should it not just detonate if it thinks there is a target? You could argue that they're programmed to not detonate unnecessarily to save money, but it's established that there aren't any explosives in the landmines, and we see that they don't actually get destroyed when they go off. So this probably isn't the case. So instead, we're going to change this to the mine deactivates if it hasn't detected a living target within 30 or 40 minutes. So rather than Mundy's view being you're already dead, it's you can't hold out for that long, which then obviously changes when she realises that he's not the only one that would be caught in the destruction. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to let go of that casket. Just let it fall. No, if he drops the casket, it'll trigger the landmine, it'll kill him. He's dead already. So when you stepped on that mine, you triggered a countdown. It's now trying to assess whether it has acquired a viable target. It stays active for 600 imports. How long is that? About 38 minutes? How long have you got left? I don't know, I must have forgotten to check my watch. Doctor, guess I was busy worrying about being liquidized. Doctor, sorry, I think about 20 minutes. give or take, then I congratulate you on getting this far, but you can't last for much longer. And if that mine detonates whilst you're holding the casket, it could be damaged. Now drop it. We're going to keep Ruby being shot and dying. I think that's such a great moment, and it really ramps up the tension. But we are going to cut the whole next of kin stuff, just because it doesn't make any sense. Like, surely it would just show Carla, or it would show the name of Ruby's birth mother because of the whole compulsory DNA sampling thing established in the finale. I don't know. It's quite messy. I understand what it's trying to do, but we don't need it. We are, however, going to keep the snow, because that is a gorgeous visual, especially on this crater set. And that moment of, while there's snow, there's hope, and then the snow stopping, that moment is brilliant. Love that. So come the end, when the Doctor's trying to convince Mundy that they're fighting themselves, buying weapons to kill themselves with, he lets slip that Veta is dead, prompting an emotional outburst from Splice, who runs up to the Doctor hysterically crying just before she's grabbed and pulled into a hug by Mundy. The Doctor then uses this as further convincing. They are killing you, destroying your lives, ripping families apart, all for profit. Mundy, please, stop this. The ultimate resolution to the story is Mundy placing her faith in the Doctor rather than the war, going against her orders and hacking into the ambulance to shut down the systems, with some clever Moffat-esque technobabble to boot. For the episode's final scene, we have the Doctor and Ruby chatting, but as said, we're going to have them reflect on the fact that Ruby's just died. Originally, I did think that maybe this should be the catalyst for Ruby wanting to return home and having all of that stuff with Carla, and whilst it would work character-wise, I don't think it would structurally. So we are going to keep it as it is, but I do want this to be a really important, quite poignant beat for both characters. And there we go, another one done. Boom. Episode 4. And on to the next one. Episode 5. Dot and Bubble. I think we need to make Lindy a little bit more likeable. I know all of these characters are meant to be cartoonishly vapid, but I'm not rooting for her because of how obnoxious she is. I think maybe focus more on the ignorance and naivete of the character, which is then revealed to be intentional and malicious come the end. Play up the horror of the man-traps. They're a really great monster design. Let's make sure we get our full use out of them. We're going to tweak the Doc's plan and reveal what they've done outside, and make sure that we don't signpost the mystery as hard as we do, just because the episode plays it like a twist and it's not really a twist. This episode has a couple of elements that I know some people don't like, so you might be expecting me to change. However, I'm going to stick with them because I actually really like them. These elements are the general aesthetic and the kind of sickly sweet nature of this world. I know there are times where it feels like it's a little bit too much, but I think it is intentional and creates a really nice backdrop for all of the monsters and murders to contrast with. I also really like the concept of the Doctor and Ruby coming in and only being able to interact with Ruby through her bubble. I know it was a workaround for Shooty's shooting schedule. That is difficult to say. Shooty's shooting schedule. Wow. But I really like it. I think it adds an extra level of threat because the Doctor isn't physically there to save the day, in a kind of similar vein to Blink. We're going to scale back some of the annoying traits for Lindy. Like I said, I think lean more into the kind of naivete. The moment where, after witnessing a horrific murder literally a few feet to her right, Lindy turns back and tries to get on with her work, trying to block it all out and panicking and just reverting to what she knows. It's such a great moment, a really nice character beat, and I think we're going to come back to that later, just from a different angle. Keep her frustration at herself for not being able to walk without the bubble. The whole, like, I'm so stupid, small moments like that do a lot to make her not seem like a complete prick, which I think we need more of in order to actually be invested in her survival. Keep the lift scene, but we're going to change the reason for the man-trap not eating Lindy. Instead of it just letting her go, because I think that kills some of the tension and there's a question over whether she's actually in danger, especially when the Doctor draws attention to that fact. We're going to have someone else walking down the corridor straight towards the creature, and Lindy quickly dodges out of the way into the lift, foreshadowing her later sacrifice of Ricky. Although here it's framed as a lucky escape, next time it will be much more deliberate. Cut all of the Doctor's hypotheses on why the creatures don't eat everyone. I know what it's doing, but it feels really obvious and signposted. Maybe just have him questioning it and wondering why until he has more information. I also want to cut the Susan Twist cameo in this one. I don't know, it just feels really on the nose, and I'd much prefer the more subtle background inclusions of her. If we do want her in every episode, then she can just be on the news report at the start, or maybe we just get a brief glimpse of her in the bubble at some point. But I think drawing attention to it so clearly doesn't really work for me. And also at this point we've still got another 3 stories to go before the finale, whereas in the original run you'd only have 1 story between this and the finale. So I can understand why we're kind of amping it up, but for this version we're going to tone it down. I also think Lindy should be able to walk by the time she gets to the plaza. It's a fun little tongue-in-cheek concept and gag at the start, and I think you can even keep her walking into the lamppost. But here, just focus on the horror of her having to walk through the middle of this road of creatures. You can still have Ricky being the one to guide her, but have it that she's in so much of a panic and out of her comfort zone without the bubble that she freezes, so she still has to rely on instruction. Keep pretty much everything with Ricky. I really like that he subverts the cliche and takes on the Doctor-esque role, and also the added context that Lindy is quick to trust and put her faith in him when she refuses to do so with the Doctor. I also really like the tone change when he comes into the narrative, with that more hopeful optimism that everything's going to be alright, only for it to 180. Keep the revelations of the man-traps eating the residents in alphabetical order and the dots being behind it, but we're going to change the idea of them being created. Instead, they are real, naturally existing biological creatures that exist on this planet that have previously been kept at bay, but the dots have bypassed all the security systems and let the man-traps into the complex, and also leading people directly into their paths, systematically getting rid of them all. Maybe just add a reference to the fact that because the man-traps can't get to Lindy now, the dots will try to get to her some other way, which gives a little bit of explanation as to why they need the man-traps and don't just off them all themselves. Maybe doing so would alert the system to what they're doing and some kind of fail-safe, I don't know. But there should be a reason that they can't get their hands dirty and need the man-traps to do this for them. And finally, keep everything in this final scene. Don't touch it. Ncuti's performance here is absolutely incredible, and it takes an absolute sledgehammer to my heart every time I see it. It is beautiful. I really like the added context that Ricky was the only one of the Fine Time residents that knew the outside world didn't exist, and they probably would have believed him. So Lindy's kind of condemned them all through her act of cowardice and essentially murder, but the Doctor's desperate pleading for them to let him save them, despite everything, for them to throw it back in his face out of some archaic prejudice, and just seeing how that hits the Doctor, it's such a strong moment. And there we go, that is episode 5, Dot and Bubble, done. So that brings us to the halfway point of the season and also the end of part 1. Thank you very much for watching, I really appreciate it. Please let me know what you think of some of these rewrites, and also let me know if you've got any suggestions of your own. I'm genuinely really interested to hear some other ideas around this, so it'd be great to have a bit of a chat and a brainstorm in the comments. As I say, keep an eye out for part 2, hopefully it won't be too much longer, but I just really wanted to get at least some of this out before season 2 airs. Speaking of season 2, my friend Kat and I have recently started a podcast called the Says Who podcast. It's us talking Doctor Who, doing reviews, discussions, topics, all of that sort of stuff. And we're going to be reviewing each episode of the new season as it comes out. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, episode 1 is out already. It's us talking our predictions and theories for the upcoming season. And then new episodes are going to be dropping every Wednesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and also right here on my YouTube channel. If that sounds like your thing, I'd really appreciate it if you went and checked it out and gave it a listen and let us know what you think. But that's all from me. Thank you again for watching, and I will hopefully see you again sometime. Alright, cheers. Bye.